I never thought the most honest residents in my neighborhood would be my bees. But one morning at 7 a.m., I was standing on my porch in flannel pants and an old t-shirt, watching our HOA president sprint barefoot down Hawthorne Lane, with a cloud of honeybees around her like living karma. And I knew every sting she took had her own signature on it. Neighbors froze with coffee. Halfway up, sprinklers kept ticking. Her pearl-white SUV sat in the driveway, and Deborah Collins, self-appointed queen of Cedar Ridge Hills, dove behind a truck, screaming that she was under attack, while all I could think was this: started with one missing package, and a woman who believed a clipboard made her in charge of the world. My name is Ethan Cole. I am 38, a former firefighter who moved out here for quiet after years of siren smoke and 3 a.m. knocks with bad news. And I really believed I had earned a small blue house, a porch swing, and the kind of peace where the loudest thing on my property was the hum of my bees in the morning, not someone banging on my door with threats of fines. I got into beekeeping because I needed something steady to pull me out of that constant adrenaline. I read every regulation, registered my hives with the county double-checked setbacks, and fencing kept everything clean and tucked away for 3 years. Nobody complained, nobody got stung, everyone liked the free honey. Luis, our mailman, would laugh, "Morning, Ethan, morning, ladies," as he dropped my boxes, and life was boring in the best way. Then Deborah moved in. She arrived like a walking policy binder SUV with fresh magnets clipboard, before curtained smile that said she had already ranked us. You know the type, the one who walks like the property lines bend around her opinions. Within a week, every doorstep had an updated guidelines packet. She made herself notes on grass length and curtain color and flower pots. The word "fine" underlined so many times you got the point, and people started joking quietly that we had a new sheriff. The first time she stepped on my property, she did not knock, just pushed my gate and walked in. While I was in my bee-suit heels on gravel, staring at the hives. "Sir, are you aware you are keeping stinging insects less than 30 feet from community walkways? This is a family neighborhood," she said. I looked around at 3 retired couples and a night shift nurse and said, "Yes, ma'am. They are registered honeybees legal. Nobody has had an issue." She sniffed. "It is Mrs. Collins. I will be reporting this to the HOA board." She snapped a photo and left, like she had done her duty. And I thought, all right. She loves power more than facts. But maybe this blows over. A couple weeks later, my packages started disappearing. Small boxes, first feeders, frames, tools, all marked delivered, none on my porch. At first I blamed porch pirates, but it was only my stuff, never. Mrs. Green's sewing supplies, never Marcus's car parts. And then I checked my camera and saw the cord neatly unplugged. That quiet kind of violation hits hard. One evening, Marcus came over while I was closing the hive's hands in his pockets and said, "You did not hear this from me, but I saw Deborah grab one of your boxes. Told her husband she was securing it for HO, walked it right into her garage." In my head, everything clicked, and that old tight feeling from the job came back when you see someone push people around because they think nobody will push back. And I remember thinking I moved here to get away from that. Next morning, I went to the real HOA office. Tiny beige room off the pool, asked, "Is there any rule letting HOA take packages from porches?" And Jan at the desk said, "No, never. We do not touch mail." That was the moment I stopped giving Deborah excuses. That night, I sat on my porch with the bees humming and decided if she wanted to play official, we would do this official. I bought a cheap GPS tracker, tucked it in an empty Amazon box, wrote my full name and address, big on the label, rewired a camera with backup power, asked Luis to drop it like normal. At 10:03, he set it down. At 10:21, she showed up on video, pastel blazer. Tiny dog looked around, picked up my box, walked it into her garage. I waited long enough to be sure, then walked over. "Morning, Deborah. I am missing a package with my name on it. Any chance you saw it?" She did not blink. "I secured it. Unattended packages are a community risk, HOA protocol." I showed her the tracker ping sitting inside her garage and said, "Feels more like theft than protocol." Behind her, I could see other boxes with my name. She stiffened. "If you are accusing me, I will have you fined." "If I am accusing you," I said calm, "I am sending this to the postal inspector." For once, she went quiet. That night, she called an emergency board meeting, stood up in front of everyone, and painted me as some creep spying on her planting devices, making her feel unsafe. When they let me respond, I did not give a speech. I just played the video. The room went still. Somebody let out a short laugh they tried to swallow. Greg, the vice president, muttered about misunderstandings. And "we will address this." But there was no apology, no result, just a room full of people too polite to name what they had seen. Walking home, I realized the board was afraid of her, not interested in right or wrong, and if I did nothing, this would keep going. The next morning, a bright orange notice screamed from my door, "Unapproved apiary. Remove hives in 72 hours, or face daily fines." Quoting a section that did not exist, I actually laughed, emailed it to the county with my permits, and a few days later, the inspector checked my setup, told me, "You are 100% compliant. These hives are protected if she interferes, Malas." And left a written report I taped to the fridge like a shield. That should have settled it. Instead, she doubled down. Flyers appeared about aggressive bees and public safety, with a hornet photo pulled off the internet warning parents about a street that did not even have kids on it. People started rolling their eyes. Marcus said at the mailboxes, "If Ethan's bees were dangerous, we would all be gone already." And a couple neighbors laughed, a crack in her crown. Part of me wanted to tuck the hives out of sight and avoid the headache, but I was tired of living small, so someone unreasonable could feel big. So I moved one small hive to a visible but legal spot by the porch, planted lavender around it, made it obvious I was not hiding that I knew where I stood. I ordered one more cheap package, left it out, a camera rolling. Deborah came, saw the hive, hesitated, then ego won. She stepped onto my porch, reached for the box. A bee landed on her hand. She flailed, stirred a few more, and within seconds she was bolting down the sidewalk, yelling, while 3 bees lazily followed. Yeah, that happened. Neighbors saw it. You could feel the story start to turn, like everyone was finally seeing the same movie I'd been living. Late one night, not long after my phone buzzed with another motion alert, I checked the feed, and there she was, in a dark hoodie, dragging a metal can toward my fence, and my gut twisted when I realized it was pesticide. She knelt by one of the hives, kicked the box, started to spray. That box was empty from a recent move, but the vibration woke the live hives beside it. Bees poured out like a small storm. I stepped onto the porch and shouted, "Deborah, get away from the hives!" But she was already swinging her arms, knocking into another stand. And the bees did exactly what they are wired to do when somebody attacks their home. They went after the threat. She ran screaming across the lawn. Motion lights popping on neighbors in doorways, watching their president sprint from the same hives she had called a menace. When the sheriff arrived, He had already seen my permits. I showed him the footage, the pesticide can, my paperwork. He looked at her, puffed up and shaking, and said, "Ma'am, these hives are legal. This is trespassing and attempted damage. This cannot continue." Nobody stepped up to defend her. Within days, the board announced she was suspended. Greg resigned. The fake violations stopped, and people started talking to me like a neighbor again, instead of a problem. A couple weeks later, the for sale sign went up in her yard. On moving day, she walked over in sunglasses, jaw tight, and muttered, "You think you won?" I told her, "No, I think consequences finally did." And that was the only honest conversation we ever had. She drove away, and the whole street seemed to exhale. That night, a few neighbors wandered over with beers and desserts. Someone joked we should rename it Honey Owners Association. The bees floated over the clover like they had the place under control the whole time. And for the first time since she arrived, I felt like my home was mine again. I still replay it sometimes, because I know some of you are already asking what I asked myself. Did I go too far? By recording her, by baiting the package, by refusing to let it slide? Or is that just what standing your ground looks like when someone hides behind a title to steal from you and try to destroy what you built? I never touched her property, never sent the bees after her on purpose. I stayed inside the law and let her own choices collide with each other. Some people will say she deserved worse. Some will say I should have forgiven and kept the peace at my expense. So tell me what you think. Where is the line between protecting your home and becoming the villain in someone else's story? Have you ever dealt with a Deborah, someone who thought rules were weapons and you were a target? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you are watching from. Share your own stories. And if you believe people have a right to protect their hive without being bullied by a clipboard, hit like, hit subscribe, and share this with the next person who needs to hear it.